My name is Teresita Blanco, dear sister, and today we're reading Saturnastra, Karina. This is Lesson 9, Part 1, on Aging and Other Nonsense. The following week after the incident, Karina spent her days quite pleasantly. One day she said to Letholdus, I think you should travel abroad with your father. How so? He doesn't trust me yet, said Letholdus. Yes, but you can be a pack mule at the very least. You can then work your way up in the family business, said Karina, laughing. The two were in Karina's bedroom getting dressed after showering. Letholdus commented, You are getting a bit of a belly. Yes, and you are becoming more foolish by the day, said Karina, sneering. She added, You should ask your mother about it, and maybe the light of understanding will finally fall upon you. Letholdus left rather confused, and after having a heart-to-heart conversation with his mother, he came to realize the nature of Karina's ever-enlarging size. It took a bit of coaxing on Karina's side to force Letholdus to agree to travel abroad. He figured that he had abused Marduke's hospitality enough. It was time to settle down and get a home of his own, and to make room for his ever-expanding family. It was a good opportunity as well, because between Birkat and Vaikum, Marduke's home was becoming annoying. Also, Sivano tended to act a little uneasy whenever Karina was around. He pretended he was cool with her, but in reality he was not. Whenever Sivano was with any one of Marduke's relatives, he felt like he did not belong there. It never did quite help the fact that at times his siblings would leave him completely out of the conversation, and that at times some would laugh at things that he could not see. Moments like those highlighted the fact that poor Marduke was a completely different being. Marduke did not aim to make Sivano feel out of place. One only could pretend to be a normal fellow for so long, and it eventually becomes exhausting, and Marduke was slowly nearing that tipping point. Wanalini had never bothered to try, and Rimaro was in the red zone like the Banshee Chihuahua, and so he required constant monitoring. Overall, things seemed a little tense in the city, but it was caused by the overabundance of information regarding the incident. Not only the tiny newspaper, but there was the bar gossiping as well about the duel. And Flamesco was starting to lose followers due to the seemingly erratic behavior of Janus. This small, insignificant local event did provide relatively peace to the region, because they were no longer focusing on Marduke. With famine demoralized because of the petty actions of his sons, the protests stopped occurring and even in the regions that segmented away from the kingdom, they started experiencing some instability. The roads became safer, so Letholdus and his family left Veragerung one spring in search of money. With her husband gone, Karina breathed a sigh of relief, and when the day she went to school, she developed the habit of gibberish singing. From time to time, even the tiny dragons and the little birds would join in, and in this particular day, Karina had brought Hilda as an attachment. She was jabbering about nonsense that Karina pretended to understand. It all boiled down to the fact that Brunhilda wanted to munch on some of the architecture but was not allowed. And from time to time she would get distracted by a group of ants passing by. She was particular about ants, and ants were very particular about Brunhilda as well. Today she had a particularly large Dinophonera ant on her shoulder, and every once in a while a helpful stranger would try to remove the ant, but Brunhilda would respond with angry shouting. And when Karina arrived at the classroom, she found all her students except for Janus, who had become distant ever since acting out. Even Centarion was up, and she was the first to greet Karina. Hello, teacher. How is Janus doing? He is fine. A little thin from lack of sunlight, but he will eventually be moved to a summer cottage by his father outside the city. He has a waterfall and everything, and a nice river for him to drown in, explained Karina. It is safe to be out of the city, asked Regent. It is as safe as any other place. Even here one may never know when death may strike, said Karina grimly. Yes, there may be guards in most corners, but there is not enough of them to keep the fellow standing beside you from suddenly stabbing you in the shoulder, said Piccolina. You're only saying that... Piccolina.
The little fart.
That's a funny joke. You're only saying that because I am sharpening my knife, said Lucian. He had arrived a little earlier and had started to do some inventory checks. He had noticed that his knife was a little dull, so he had been sharpening the knife to pass the time. The whole Janus situation had left everyone on edge, and Bobby so changing the subject said, so what nonsense are we doing today? Oh, and by, is the baby kicking or whatever they do when they're in their belly? Karina nimbly sat down as if the swelling mass beneath her chest was not there. Smiling, she said, do you want to feel it or do some other types of cliches? I will, but I don't want your husband to find out and stab me, said Bobby, still laughing. Yes, who knew that Letholdus had it in him to fight back, said Sultari aloud, surprised. He was always such a wuss when growing up, said Miko, remembering the little fellow. Whenever Letholdus was challenged, he always ran to his mommy. He did the same thing too up until recently, whenever he met with any violent confrontation. This changing character left Carmeta rather thoughtful as well. In the end, she realized that Letholdus was not so much of a coward as a non-confrontational type of fellow. The alley where the incident had taken place did not have any exit, so it was the corner rat scenario. When describing the incident, Letholdus had been a little too simple for everyone's taste. He simply said, Janus came at me and I was forced to defend myself. I was lucky to have come out alive without killing my opponent. A couple of the kids had seen the incident, but the descriptions of the events were a little too confusing and exaggerated, with the van attacks with the dagger and the power of the goddess manifesting itself inside Janus and burning the entire alley and part of Letholdus with it. It was hard considering the popular belief that the gods only sided with good people. This insignificant incident alone had a large ramification, but that did not seem too obvious at first. After going on tangents for a bit, Lucian eventually said, so, do you have any silly stories for us today? Yes, but they are more of parables, said Karina. Parables, repeated Lucian, unfamiliar with the term. Oh, you mean like one of those moral metaphorical type of stories that the priests are so fond of telling, said Carmeta. More or less. My grandma was ruminating on a silly idea, and she thought that what if people first came into the world out of a magic coffin, and if you came out as an old person, people celebrated that you had an old life, and if you had come out young, they got sad because you were not going to live long, said Karina. Well, if that fate world, old age would be on a pedestal instead of the cultural Bibles today where it is fashionable to be ripped and under 30, said Miko. What? Asked Bobby, so confused. It means that old people would be preferred over young people, said Karina. What about accidental death or illness, and what if a disgruntled young fellow started killing old people, said Carmeta. That does happen either today, with or without the coffin. I just don't know the answer to your question. I just told this story to vent it, but if you're going to rip it apart, then it is not worth using in the lesson, said Karina, sighing. You're no fun, said Bobby, so funny. So what happens when you reach the end of your natural lifespan? Do you enter your parents' womb being unbirthed, or will you enter another one of the convenient ethereal types or whatever, like glowing orchids or whatnot, asked Miko. That is something to consider, said Karina. Yep. Because what if they kill your destined biological parents before you're unborn, and then what happened to you? Do you, fade away or something? Asked Miko. Yeah, the idea seems pretty stupid if you ask me, said Casimir, finally contributing to the conversation. How so? Elaborate, so I can forward this critique to my dear old, overworked grandmother, said Karina. Overworked? What do you have her doing? Raising your grandnephew? There comes a time when they should be allowed to relax, said Carmeta, sighing. I don't know, some people do not do well with relaxing, said Karina. I do so wish, but even with money entering the family, there is a good chance that she will continue mortifying herself, because that's the type of person she wants to be, a martyr. Time?
5 minutes.
That doesn't sound like a fair thing to say about your grandmother, Karina, said Casimir. Well, it doesn't matter much in the long scheme of things, said Karina, sighing. If it will help you, you could remove the bizarre coffin out of the picture. You could just make it that people are born looking like old farts and then they die looking like babies, suggested Reggie. That idea has been done before, and besides, people tend to idolize the middle ground state and look down on the start and ending of life, said Karina. As with most things, we spend most of our lifespan in one helpless form or another. In the first years of our life, we are dependent on our parents, and in the latter, we depend on our own children. Speak for yourself, said Miko, shuddering. I depend on no one. And that maid who feeds you and cleans your house is not someone you depend on, asked Karina sarcastically. I guess the moral of the day is understanding interdependence. It doesn't matter how strong we feel at the time. In the end, we spend most of our lives needing others to lend us a helping hand, said Suntaria. Still sucks though, said Randy. I wish we were not born helpless. Yes, but if you were not born helpless, you could become a solitary creature like the dragon, said Karina. I wish I was a dragon, said Casimir sadly. Me too, said Miko. Brunhilda said a bunch of gibberish in response. Reggie asked, what did that girl say? I don't know. I'm not fluent in the dragon dialect, in her spoken dragon dialect, said Karina. In what way is that girl a dragon? Asked Miko. In the same way that her father Mildred is a dragon. You have seen him transform from man to beast before, explained Karina. I see, said Miko. I have never seen a dragon change form. How does it work? Asked Piccolina. Time, bro?
2 minutes.
The transformation can be magical or hormonal. Started explaining Karina, remembering, she said, alchemy, not hormonal. I see, said the student, pretending to understand. Can you give her a potion to see if she transforms? Asked Piccolina. Brunhilda is not a pet for me to mess with, said Karina. Why so much emphasis on the brrr part? Asked Casimir. Well, anyone with a name with a lot of R's is usually a dragon. Their true names are growls or guttural sounds that the human cannot pronounce. It is for this reason that their human names exclude their true dragon name in the pronunciation, explained Karina. The gossiping about little Brunhilda continued. Brunhilda. She indeed was such a dainty maiden in her human form. None of the students could guess that she was such a belligerent little dragon. As the students were leaving, Karina said, the next class will be our last lesson. I think you folks are just about ready to head out into the big wide world as model citizens. If it is to be the final lesson, we could do a party with everyone, suggested Babiso. Not a chance. Don't forget Letholdus is traveling abroad, and Janos is a little indisposed. They're fine. Just because the boys are being big babies doesn't mean we cannot have some fun, said Reggie, smiling. I suppose it is tradition to goof off in the final class, but I promise to bring you a final lesson that none of you will ever forget, said Karina ominously. The inflation she used did not inspire much confidence. Time, bro?
2 minutes, 18 seconds.
The other students just coughed out at the inflation that Karina had used. Aside from those magical bores she had given it, her classes had been pretty mundane. When Karina was going downstairs, she gave a step into a puddle, and looking down on the floor, she said, what a bother. Casimir, who was the person to depart, said, are you alright? Is it about time? Do you need a doctor? Karina cleaned the floor with the folds of her dress. She then teleported back to her home. Casimir had never seen her depart in such a fashion. It gave him plenty to think about, and when he reached the final part of the stair, he saw all of the students assembled. Lucian said, is it about that time? Yes, how did you come to hear about it? Asked Casimir. This library echoes a lot, which sucks considering that it was designed to be hush and quiet, said Lucian. The new librarian is such a gossip, isn't she? Said Carmeta. In response to his observation, the librarian started hushing the little group of students, and they went outside to discuss the prospects of the new kid, and if Karina was going to end the classes for good, as was tradition among teachers who suddenly had kids to look after. The only maiden who did not follow the tradition thought because they were not rich. Time?
1 minute.
Let's just leave it here. Bye bye and God bless.